as many teachers as we can. So we cannot record from our end. So if you can please record, we'll be grateful.
Okay, yes. I have got record on. Yeah, you should see it on the top left. Yeah, you can see it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It is very long overdue. I have visited Palestine, but the West Bank only, many, many times. And Gaza was definitely on my list. So I'm very sorry I never got to go there. Inshallah, I will be able to come in the future. So I know Nick Bilbra from training with him. I know he is doing a lot of really good work in Gaza, and he's been lucky enough to visit you. So I hope that in the future I will be able to come as well.
Yes, we'll be very lucky if you can come.
Right. One of the things that I wanted to understand was on the Macmillan website, there is a lot of training material, teacher training material, and I want to know how much of that has been delivered to the teachers. Have you used the teacher training material with the teachers in Gaza?
And one of the sections was about, I think, about assessment.
Yes, it is. It is. But I need to understand how much, because assessment is covered in the training. So I just want to know that you have actually used the teacher training material that's on the Macmillan website.
Okay, actually we have the material reached the teachers when they started teaching the package of English for Palestine. I guess all teachers received some training. Yeah. Okay. But about when the first it was first launch.
Every teacher got special training on English for Palestine. Yeah.
And the content analysis and it reached the teachers. But you know, UNRWA is moving to authentic assessment recently. So this is a new field for all of us.
All right. All right. Well, let's get going then. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see my PowerPoint? Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
This is one of the material provided by Macmillan.
No, this is something that I have designed for you.
Oh, especially for us. Thank you.
It is for today.
For today. Okay,
yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Okay, so just to introduce myself briefly, I'm Wendy Arnold. I'm the author of English for Palestine, grade 1 to 6. But I have also done the teacher training for English for Palestine, grade 1 to 12.
Mm-hmm. But I guess this material is just for grade from 1 to 4.
Yes.
For younger learners.
Yes. Right. Something for you to work on first of all, because all my workshops and training make sure that I do not do lecture style. I want you to do some work as well. So please read those 4 statements and work out What do you think is true and false?
Testing and assessment mean the same thing. No, I don't think so. What do you think? No. Yes, it is formal assessment. Yes. So false, the first one. Do you agree? Yes.
Testing is
So
one aspect of the process. Two is false. Only takes place at the end.
At the end of the teaching,
Ongoing process. Yes.
Ongoing.
Assumption, precision, grammar, and vocabulary.
No.
Assessment can happen.
Conversations, listening and speaking.
Yes.
So we have two false, three false, and one.
Number 4.
Okay, all right, let's have a look. So number 1 is false. Testing is just one assessment tool. The second one is again false, because you should have an ongoing assessment. Third one, true. The initial assessment needs to cover all the areas that will be on the program and assessed at the end. And the last one, true. Let's just go back.
Number 3 is false.
So
No, I think you're right. Actually, the number 3 is false. It's not. It's false. Yeah. Good. I'm glad you did that. That caught you. All right. What I'd like you to do now is I want you to write down what you know about assessment, what you want to know, and what you have learned, which we will do at the end of this session. So just very quickly, do it for yourself. 1 minute. I'd like to see you writing.
What I learned.
What I know, what I want to know.
I can't see very many people writing.
So we're just
Discussing.
This is personal. This is your personal understanding. Okay. The reason why I wanted to do this is that learning for anybody is going from what you know now to new knowledge being added.
constructivism. You start to build on what you already know. Yeah.
Basically, what I'm doing is to try to get you to activate your schema, your knowledge of assessment. Where's the gap that you think you're missing? And I hope by the end, I will have filled some of those gaps. All right.
Good morning.
So it's all personal, individual.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on. So in this session, we're going to look at the rationale for assessment. Look at when we want or need to assess. Think about how effective your assessment tools actually are. And how we're going to use these outcomes for planning. And look at the content of grade 1 to 4, English for Palestine, and some ideas for assessment. So again, you can do this individually or in groups. Why do we assess our learners, and what is it we want from the assessment?
Okay, we assess our learners to see how they are improving and to provide additional support for students who struggle or who
Sometimes we assess for learning, and sometimes we assess learning. Assessment of learning is different from assessment
of learning.
or
And assessment as learning.
as learning. Yes.
as learning.
You have different levels. Assessment as learning for learning of learning.
Yeah.
And in all cases, we were looking forward for improving.
For improving students and filling the gaps in the students' learning.
Okay.
What do we want from assessment? So you want to judge.
Just for feedback, to develop, improve practices, to increase the skills.
But sometimes you need records to give for parents, to give for evidences. You want to collect data on students' performance.
So assessment is useful and beneficial for teachers and the students as well.
Yes,
And
exactly.
parents.
For parents.
Curriculum designer, decision makers.
For
So
decision.
everyone here, all stakeholders can get benefit from this assessment.
Even for the curriculum itself.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So it should identify the skills and learning needs. Provide the teacher information that can plan on how to meet those needs. Measure progress. Inform the teaching and learning. Because if something has not been covered well, you have to teach again.
Yes, exactly.
Right. 5 minutes. How many of you are in the class now?
Yes, I have 5 or 6 teachers here.
How many of you are there?
How many of yours
Are there?
So you right now.
20 or 21?
You're
There are
21.
Some
Right.
teachers, some education specialists, and some policy makers, or let's say technical.
Okay. I'd like you to get into small groups with the people who are sitting next to you. And I'd like each group to take a different question. So can you please get into groups? Rita, can you organize that, please?
Groups of 4.
Groups of 4 or 5.
Yes.
You're here.
So each group will tackle one point.
Yes.
Okay. So 1, 2, 3, and 4.
4 groups.
Okay? You've got 5 minutes.
Yes. What testing and assessment tools do you use at the moment? هلا يعني عشان نحكي هلا نحكي احنا testing and assessment tools we use. احنا we already have the test on the test. No, most of the tools are there.
What testing and assessment tools do you use at the moment?
We have a lot of tools. We have a lot of tools, but they are not important on us.
هي بتعتمد انه احنا ايش بنستعمل حاليا. احنا بنستعمل
Teachers use, but not
أول حاجة تنسى
in a wide range.
part of formal assessment. They already use a informal assessment.
what this thing
This thing is harder.
حتى لو بتستخدم في الانفورمال بس الريكوردز بتقدم للطلاب بتيجي على التست. يعني ايه هذا الشيء؟
Don't you use observation? We use it.
اوكي بس الداتا كانت على شيء كلها على شيء يعني مثلا تقييم observation speaking بس in addition to the formal, we use informal assessment ongoing for
2 minutes.
بس we have use for taking decisions. Very formal, not formal. It's not formal.
They are without being aware of it. We are assessing their ability to pronounce the words, their memorization,
Teachers use ongoing, they use observation.
ongoing formative assessment to support and improve. We are trying new trends. We are trying the session will carry from 1 to 4. We're trying last year we are initiating that new trend
All right, and stop. Ooh. Okay, Rita.
Rita, yes.
Rita, okay. Can I have one speaker from each group? And can we go in order of the first question, then the next, the next? 1 minute, 1 minute for each person. Go.
Okay.
1 minute. Great. Good morning.
Good morning.
I am Mohammed.
Pleased to meet you.
Concerning or regarding the first questions, what testing and assessment tools do you use at the moment? Frankly, we started this only last year. We were creating a new initiative about assessment. So we're trying to adopt and use the authentic assessment as a new trend of assessment for our students. So we use two kinds of assessment, the formal and informal method. Regarding the formal one that we rely on to give the students rank and the formal certificate at the end of the scholastic year. So we have the paper and pencil tool in which we examine the students' different language skills through testing to get a grade or a mark to be registered in his certificate. Also, we use the informal, yes?
Yep, thank you. I'm very strict, 1 minute only. Right, can I have the next group? What information do you want to get?
About the second, or concerning the second question, it was about the information that we want to get from the assessment and why. So we classify our answer into three groups. First, for the first group, we are needing information for the student. So the teacher is examining the students or assessing the students in order to get the points of weaknesses as well as the points of strengths, in order to improve the points of strengths as well as to prepare the remedial plan for the weakness points. This is number one. And the second need for the assessment is for the parents. In order, the assessment tool or the assessment process itself can give the parents records or evidences about the students' performance, or it can give them a complete description of their students' performance.
All right, and stop. And group 3, strengths and weaknesses.
No.
Strengths and weaknesses.
There are weaknesses of these tools, such as they make it take too much time and effort from the teachers. Sometimes we need to prepare.
Can you hear what she's saying?
Not really.
Okay, come on here.
لا انا بسال للاخر بالمناسبه
Yeah, she can start now. Yeah.
So I think that the traditional tools of assessment may have many weaknesses. Like they may take too much time and effort from the teachers to prepare the tests and to put marks, to revise, and then to judge how much improvement do our students get. Regarding the strength, I think sometimes they can be very good for students and parents because they have the papers in their hands, so they feel more they trust the teachers more than the authentic assessment.
Okay, all right, well done. You've done that within the minute. Great. And then the last group, what action?
Okay. The question was about action why you need to take to improve their use and effectiveness to go through the tool. First of all, to make it the background very clear, the baseline was the analysis, and we have done with analyzing the skill-based analysis, the performance-based analysis, and the competency-based analysis. This will be the baseline to the upcoming job. Next, we need the feedback, and feedback to be continuously given to all parts in this process clearly. We need feedback from the teachers, the school principals, the students, and the specialists. That's struggling the time. Okay. In addition, we need technology. That's why we designed like let's say Excel sheet or some system that would make it easier and faster for the teacher, the school principal, to make it more accurate. And we are keeping thinking of the variety, that we need more one tool that will be helpful for the teacher and the students, because we are dealing with like various skills and work on the cognitive, psychomotor, and affective.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Okay. Great. Great. That gives me a really good idea of where you want to go and the stage, the progression that you're at the moment, and where you would like to go in the future. All right. So basically, there is an assessment cycle that needs to be followed, which is the plan, do, check, act. And this should really, ideally, come from a central place. Now, if you let teachers do their own assessment, you're going to have such a wide variety of quality. Assessment's actually really difficult to write. Personally, I wouldn't leave it up to the teachers to do. I think it should come from a group that develops the assessments for Gaza. I wouldn't leave it up to the teachers. So you need to plan what are the outcomes that you want. Then obviously there's the teaching and learning cycle, which is what the teachers do. Then this is when the actual assessment is used on the checking, evaluating the students' work. When you get the feedback, that's when you have to revise and reinforce. So you have to revise where the majority of the students have gaps still, the teachers must teach again. Because there's no point in just doing assessment for the sake of assessment if you don't analyze the results and then go back in and reteach. Yeah?
Yes,
So
exactly.
here we go. So the planning is, what do you want the students to learn? The doing is the actual teaching part. Now, are your teachers teaching effectively? This is where you're going to find out if they are or they're not, because that will happen when you see what the outcomes of the test are. If you're disappointed with the results, the number one place that I would look at is, how are the teachers teaching? And then when you look and analyze at the assessment results, come up with some new learning outcomes, because it could well be that they're just not being met because the teachers are not actually using the correct methodology for teaching language. Don't ever blame the students. There is not one child that cannot learn. There really isn't. There will be something. Now, I was a teacher for 15 years. So I know what the classroom's like. It's very difficult. Teaching is one of the most difficult jobs in the world. I'd say the number one most difficult job is being a parent. But number two has got to be teaching. The responsibility is huge. I know there's some teachers in the room here, but at the end of the day, you are the most important resource in that classroom to enable your learners to learn. The course book cannot do it. The course book is just a tool to help you. And I've tried to write it in a way that is user-friendly. Now, how many of the teachers are using the teacher's book? This, yeah?
They all use it.
Okay, because this is the lesson plan. You do not need to do anything else. You do not need to make another new lesson plan. This is the lesson plan. It is all here. So if poor teachers are being asked to write another lesson plan based on this, they are wasting their time. The methodology of how to teach language is in there. I'll just leave that in your minds for a few minutes. Writing this takes me 3 times as long as writing this. Because when I write this, I am your friend holding your hand, the teacher's friend holding their hand on how to deliver what I have designed in here. Right. So traditional reading and writing tests. And this is where I think a lot of assessment goes wrong. It focuses on reading and writing only. Why? Because they're quick to take, they're quick to mark, they can be marked by anyone if you've got the answers. One test fits all, and the children get very used to them. However, it really, for grade 1 to 4, really, it is not valid. They are not really valid. The traditional pencil paper, and I'll explain why. Okay, so I'd like you to have a think about the difference between assessment of learning and assessment for learning. Just 2 minutes, and it could be a whole group discussion.
Assessments of learning
Learning
and assessment for learning.
formative evaluation, formative assessment.
Assessment of learning
Formative.
يعني this some kind
Data, collection.
but it could be related to some kind of accountability and it's يعني back حتى يعني فيه backward and back at the end of teaching course what you will say for accountability assessment for is and it's for يعني looking forward نتكلم عن
in terms of time, I guess the formative evaluation starts from the first to the end of each project. يعني
All right, and stop. Let's just get some feedback quickly. What do you think assessment of learning is first?
So I guess formative. Okay, we'd like to start.
An assessment for learning?
Assessment for learning is the kind of assessment that you are carrying inside the classroom and you are putting an objective that you are going to improve. You are collecting data, you are assessing students, not just for assessing or giving marks or grades or saying good words. It's an area of improving the students' performance. And in this way, you are looking forward, not backwards.
Yes.
Yes, to add about assessment of learning, it is an ongoing process. It is most of the time informal, and it starts from the outcomes. So you have outcomes for this lesson, and then you are observing how your students are improving. So you provide additional support for those who need it.
Okay, all right, let's have a look. All right, so here's some possible tools for this formative assessment. Observation, really important. Student portfolio. Now, this is something that I mention in the teacher's book, that you start to collect the children's, because each unit, at the end of the unit, there's a project that they should be doing. And you should be collecting the some evidence at the end of a unit to show that they have really understood the actual content of that unit, and they can actually produce something which they're presenting to the class. So there is speaking and listening, reading and writing involved at the end of each unit. Quizzes. Teacher can easily make up a quiz. Can do statements for self-assessment. Now, again, I wouldn't do this for grade 1 to 3. I'd only started at grade 4 because cognitively, the children aren't ready before that. Presentations at the end of each unit. The student should be doing a presentation in some way, a production, either a writing or a speaking or a combination. They have to make a poster or a booklet or some kind of production. Now, dictation. I hate it. Absolutely hate it. It's a very traditional way of trying to assess the students. I don't know, to be honest, because in Hong Kong, I was made to do dictation because that's what the school wanted. what I found was that children who had very good memories, photographic memories, were very good at just memorizing and writing it. In fact, sometimes they were ahead of me. When I was reading out the dictation, they were actually ahead of me. They'd finished. So I know that some cultures love dictation. I personally I don't value it. I don't think it tests very much at all because it's not usable. Language is a tool of thought. It's not fixed. So dictation, when are you ever going to use that combination of words again? But I have to leave that with you. So some key points. We need to focus on what's being taught. Very important. We have to ensure that there's a balance of skills. 4 skills are being taught. The weighting in a test should be 25% for each skill. If you ignore listening and speaking, you are basically teaching deaf and dumb children. You use the test outcomes to review and inform the teaching and learning process. You should not be having too many tests. You should not have instructions that are more complicated than the test, and you should not teach to that test. Very important. Right. What have you learnt up to this little bit? I've got more. What have you learnt? Just jot it down. So you wrote at the beginning, what do you know? What you want to know? I want you now just to write down, what have you learnt from this first section that I've done? This is for your own professional development. Just think about what the process we've just been through. What have you actually learnt?
Teachers should stick to the teacher's guide and not to try to write a new lesson plan.
No, this is not the point.
Right. Who would like to share with me one thing that has jumped at them that they didn't know before?
For me, using the presentation as an assessment tool, even for grade 1 and 2, I haven't thought of this before because I thought that the students or the children are too young for doing that. But yes, you can find a way to let the students produce or give an outcome in a way or another. Very simple things to present.
Yep. Okay. Somebody else?
Yes. Anything else?
What have you learned?
Anything new?
I learned something new about dictation. That dictation can't always be used as an accurate assessment tool to give us information about how much word acquisition the student had grasped or mastered. That was really a new thing that I have ever learned.
Okay. Anybody else?
About lesson planning and how the teacher should stick to the teacher's guide, that you use the three times in writing it rather than the course book itself. So to make it very important to them and just to it when they plan their lesson. That's very well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, rule number 1. you cannot assess what you have not taught, which might sound, well, of course, it's logical, but you would be amazed at some of the tests that I have seen, where teachers have an impression that they have taught something, that the children must know something, and they include it in exams, and they get bad results. You can only assess what you have taught. So if you've only managed to do 3 units, you can only assess 3 units. Even though your schedule says 4 units. You cannot assess the children on that 4th unit if you have not actually taught it. Very important. You cannot use activities in an assessment if you have not taught them in the lesson. You cannot suddenly have completely different types of activities that the learners have never seen before in the assessment. They have to be comfortable with the activity type. So you should use the activities that are in the pupil's book as a model for the assessment. All right, I just want to show you very quickly for any of you who are interested in low order thinking to high order thinking. So on the right hand side, I have got Bloom's taxonomy. Some of you might be aware of Bloom's taxonomy. I've actually got it upside down. This shows you low order thinking up to high order thinking, all right? On the left-hand side, I've got Dale and Bloom. This is the cones of experience, how people learn. People generally remember about 10% of what they read, 20% of what they hear. So lecture style does not work for most people. 50% of what they hear and they see, 70% of what they say and write, and 90% of what they do. Now, that actually aligns to Bloom's taxonomy create, which is high order thinking. So the reason I've turned Bloom's taxonomy upside down is that just reading and lecture style being told something aligns to knowledge and remembering stuff. Very low order thinking. In order to develop your understanding, you have to start applying what you've learned. So memorization is not going to get you anywhere. You have to actually start using it. So language is not like a content subject. It's not like maths or science or geography. It's a tool of thought. Okay? And so this is why listening and speaking is incredibly important. It's taking out what's inside your head, externalizing and sharing it. And the reading and the writing are just symbols that human beings have invented to symbolize what goes on inside your head. Once you start to really understand that, you can start to understand how to develop proper assessment tools. So, now English for Palestine takes a step-by-step approach. Children hear the words, then they say them, then they start to recognize the symbols, and then finally they move on to writing them. Those last 2 skills, reading and writing, are incredibly difficult for learners, which is why we have to base the lessons around a firm foundation of listening and speaking. So, the teacher's book. That is the lesson plan. If teachers are not using that, they are not following the methodology that will lead to success. All right. So the content of the teacher's book is the map of the program, of the course. The activities are done in a certain order. Now, I'm just going through this very quickly because all the teachers and all the supervisors should know this. The supervisor's job really should be to absolutely enforce, because you will not be able to ascertain whether the children are really learning if the teachers are not following how this particular course has got to be delivered. Because the outline of the course is there. The instructions on how to deliver the course is there. When to introduce concepts. So, basically, you need to know what the components are in order to write the learning outcomes for the assessment. What the objectives are. When you start to assess the reading skills, and when you start to assess the writing skills. Now, each of the grade 1 to 4 has got 14 units of content, okay, and 4 units of revision. Now, after the revision, that would probably be quite a good place for, I mean, the revision units are actually a type of assessment anyway. And your education department, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, your education department is very clear that formal assessment should not start until grade 4. You know that, don't you? Grade 4 is the first time you should do any kind of formal assessment, for the simple reason that the learners have not got enough content yet until they've done at least 3 years of the language. Now, of course, there are things that you can assess. There are things, but that would be an informal assessment. And we try to cover that in the revision units anyway. So, very important to understand what the objectives are for each grade. So we're starting with high frequency English words, very simple grammar, many opportunities to engage in meaningful activities. And this is very important for the actual assessment. The assessment activities need to be meaningful. It's very clear that grade 1, the children should only be focusing on counting up to 10 in English. It is not clever to say, oh, that's so easy, they can do up to 100. Please don't. If you find that teachers are doing things like that, stop them. Because there is so much content. The way that we have worked out the content to be taught over the period of a year is by how many lessons do you have, and how many because you need to recycle language. Just because you've been taught it in one unit does not mean that you know it. You have to do a lot of recycling, okay? So the amount of content is really controlled so that there are enough opportunities for recycling. So less is more. Okay, I'm going to jump through this because this you should know anyway. These are all the objectives. Again, you can only assess what you've been taught. All right, again, the reading skills. Again, all of this I've got from your teacher's books. So, but these are the things that you can assess. For example, if you want to assess reading, grade 1, it should only be the letters. Can they recognize the letters and some high frequency words? Can they say them? Can they read them, decode them? Do they know their letters and sound alignment? Grade 2, then you can start to look at, well, do they know words and do they know simple sentences? So all of this is here. These are some of the things that you can assess for reading skills. Because language construction is like this. You've got the sounds and the letters. Now, Arabic is exactly the same. You've got symbols that correspond to sounds. Yes. Then you make words from them. Then from words, you go to simple sentences. The sentences go to a simple text. Sentences, simple text. And this is how we develop language, from simple to complex. And again, very important to understand this for assessment. All right, so for developing writing skills, here are the things that can be assessed at these grades. Now, grade 1, only the lower case is introduced. The uppercase is not introduced until grade 2. So if grade 1 teachers are trying to assess uppercase, there's a big, big problem. Okay? All right. I just wanted to remind you that grade 1 and 2, we make a lot of focus on how to hold the pencil properly. Now, this will be the same for Arabic as well. How to form the letters, directionality, number and letter formation. These are the things that teachers can assess. This is authentic assessment. Only these things should be assessed for the reading and the writing. Okay. Okay, so the testing, as well as the tests at the end of grade 4, which is formal, it is useful to do informal. Now, by informal, I mean looking at what is covered in each unit and the learning outcomes, and informally assess those. Are the children getting it? All right. If they're not getting it, you need to revisit it. Don't make it a race to get through all the units, because if they're not getting it, the teachers need to go back and cover it again. It's not a race to finish the book. So I'm going to stop there right now. I just want to get some feedback from you. What do you think is happening in your classrooms about assessment? Rita.
Okay, well, we have been discussing this point with the technical deputy of the Chief of Education, and he said the same notion or the same concept. It is not a race to cover the book. You should, or teachers should be after building skills and competences, and that's what matters. And by moving into the authentic assessment, we are assessing the outcomes of each lesson, and we are observing our students. And in case that we notice that some outcomes are not mastered by most of our students, or by some of them, we should reteach them, or as you said, revisit this area, because that's what matters. So covering units and covering lessons without making sure that the students have mastered the objectives you have planned for is useless.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's why I did a project at the end of each unit where the children should be able to present some kind of production of what they've understood from that unit. Okay, the first few units, while they're learning what is expected of them, they're probably not that good. But by the time they get to book B, they should understand what is coming up at the end of a unit. And so that's why, you know, by the end of the year, they should have a portfolio of work, of booklets and posters and things to refer to that shows evidence of their learning. And this is where the supervisor should ask for, when they go to observe a class, they should also say to the teacher, okay, can you please show me, you know, what the children produced at the end of the units that you have finished. Really important. Because if they're skipping that, it's too much time, too much bother, then they are missing the whole point of evidence-based learning. Right, I'm going to keep going on a bit. So I just wanted to make clear that we have 3 different types of lessons: a learning lesson, a practice lesson, and a revision period. Okay? Really important to understand that they're not all the same. There is a pattern in the units for these. All right. So,
usually learning lessons, then practice. Yes.
Okay. So assessment of learning.
According to the skills. Yes. Exactly.
Right. Here we have assessment of learning. So this could be at the end of a unit, because you could use the presentation, the production of whatever the children are making at the end of a unit as an assessment. Okay? It could be at the end of a unit or at the end of term. Okay? And it is for the teacher and the learner to understand what they've actually managed to internalize in that particular space and time. It's really important for the learner to understand what they have achieved. Now, in my previous slide, if you look down here, remember to give positive feedback as much as possible. So assessment is not just to say, oh, there are all these things that you don't know yet. It's to say to the learner, wow, well done. You know all these things, and now these things we have to work a little bit more on. Okay? Which is why I hate the red pen, and I hate grades, to be honest, because it focuses on what the learner doesn't know. But, you know, you need to help them understand, wow, you've really got this bit. Look how much you already know. These are the bits that we're going to work more on now. We're going to help you develop this. All right. Now, remember, activities need to be the same style as the ones in the course book. Don't invent new things. They need to be meaningful, and all 4 skills must be assessed. And I make no apologies for putting the word deaf and dumb in there, because if you focus so much on the reading and the writing, you will have learners that do not understand the language when they hear it and can't use it. They are, in fact, deaf and dumb. Now, Gaza needs learners who can use all 4 skills. And
Yes.
listening and speaking is the foundation of language. Reading and writing comes later when you are good at listening and speaking. Okay, very important to remember that. Think about the natural approach to learning your first language. Babies, what's the first thing that they actually start to learn is listening, and then they speak. They don't start to read and write at the same time as listening and speaking. So if you introduce too much of a focus on reading and writing, then you are going to have a big problem. Okay. So you need to use, for the learning outcomes, you need to use the contents in the pupil's book, which is the scope and sequence of language. You need to look at the different activity types used in the pupil's book and design a test using the contents page and the activity types already covered. And you must assess the skills in this order: listening, speaking, reading, writing. Okay, very important. Okay, so assessment for learning. Oh, I don't know what it's doing there. I don't know, sorry, but something strange has happened there. Assessment for learning is continual assessment. This is something that can be done every lesson. The teacher can start to get a feel for their learners. Are they getting it? Are they? So this is why in the back of teacher's book, there is, sorry, it's mirror writing here. It's the teacher's notes grid. And the teacher can start to write comments for themselves, areas for review. Did the children get that lesson? What are their favorite games or activities and songs? Because that's what should be used for the assessment. So this is for grade 1. Grade 2's got the same thing as well. So the teachers start, at the end of the lesson, they start to write notes for themselves so they know what the learners can do and where they have the problems. All right. The methodology is embedded in the teacher's book. If you're not using the teacher's book, the teachers are not benefiting from this course. Pupils retain 90% of what they learn if they do a real thing, which is why we have a project at the end of each unit. They're making a real thing. There is a natural order to language learning. Don't skip the listening and the speaking. Here's some examples of teachers who shared with me photographs of a production. So this is a grade 2. There was birthdays, and this particular school, a boys' school, the teachers actually put on a birthday party. So the children were learning about a birthday party, and then the teachers actually created one. Grade 4, Unit 13, a teacher shared with me. Now, the teachers do have to do some work in the first year that they use this course. They have to make word cards. And the word cards are incredibly important. Incredibly important, because the children are going to be using these for constructing and deconstructing language, word order, starting to think about, well, oh, why is that particular word at the beginning of a sentence, and what happens at the end of a sentence? Really important. If the teacher has no time to make them, guess what? The children can make them for them. As long as they're nice and clear, they can get groups of children to make these word cards. You will see every single lesson unit in the teacher's book says word cards, see language for details, language building. They have to be made. If the teachers are not making that, again, supervisors, when you go to observe a lesson, ask the teachers to show you the materials that they have made for that lesson, because that's the teacher's part. Rita? Yeah, I know you're on mute. Can you just give me some feedback on that?
Some feedback on what have been discussed so far.
Yeah.
So we are just processing what have been discussed, and as my colleague Muhammad has said at the beginning, we are moving from traditional way of teaching and assessing, not teaching, from assessing to the authentic assessment. So in the past years, we depend on paper and pencil, even for lower grades. And you said something very important, that no formal assessment for grade 1, 2, 3. So we are starting formal assessment from grade 4, and that's what we are doing now. So we are on the right track. We are paying more attention to teaching, listening, and speaking now, because in the past we didn't use to assess them formally, but we use as teachers, we go and observe lessons, and students and teachers while teaching, they observe how students progress and develop in speaking and listening. But formally, this is not being taken into account. But in the new phase, or in adopting the authentic assessment, we are going to pay more attention for listening and speaking and as basic skills, then moving from that to reading and writing. That's what I'm thinking. If you have anything to add, you can.
Actually, what I want to add is the continual process of assessment or assessment for learning. Teachers already do this in their classes, but they don't have recourse for these assessment activities or tasks.
Or the notes.
So they don't have the regular or formal notes to be registered. Regarding the areas of review that is registered at the end of the teacher's book, it is there, but teachers usually don't get use of that. So we can
just focus on that.
Focus on. We have an area in each preparation notebook for teachers, which is called reflection. So reflection is related to the teacher's practices, and it can also, yes, be for students' performance, whatever the methodology, the audiovisual media, whatever. So these are the points that I want to tackle or stress.
And the portfolio, the portfolio
is there, yes. But some teachers take that part of the portfolio, which is costly, and some students try to prepare or design things which make the learning process costly and difficult to be handled.
Simple things, you can use simple materials or something done inside the class as a group task. Or
and this is the point we should
focus on tasks.
What I want to discuss here, the teacher's book as a preparation tool for teachers. It is okay, and I know that everything for teacher is really there. But how do we guarantee that teachers have already read the steps and have already prepared themselves well before the classroom? Or some teachers will say everything is written there in the teacher's book, but they will not prove that they have read it, okay? Or at least have an idea about the steps or strategies that are used there.
Anyway, this is okay. Yeah.
But just to make something clear, Wendy, because all the teachers here are asked to provide an additional, in addition to the teacher's book and the notes, they have to give their own lesson plans depending on the teacher's book. So
oh, horrible! What a waste of time! What a waste of time! It's, you know, teachers are such busy people that they have to write another lesson plan when the lesson plan is already there. Can they not do something more useful, like develop the word cards?
yes,
add notes about their particular class, you know, that shows evidence that they have looked at that lesson plan before they actually teach that lesson, because they're handwritten notes, that you know, things that they want to do as well. Because this, you know, one of the arguments that teachers have given to me over the years is, but Wendy, if we just do everything that you say in your book, where is our professional experience in this? And I said, because you will handwrite the things that, because you know your kids better than I do, you will handwrite, or you put stickers or whatever you want, or a whole page on your particular class, how you might adapt different parts of that lesson. But what we want is consistency across the whole of Palestine. And the only way of doing that is by having one lesson plan. Otherwise, you are going to have thousands of different lesson plans.
They all depend on the lesson plans on the teacher's guide.
The main structure
Yes,
is there,
yes,
but
yes.
they change the activities, some tasks that are given to the
Sometimes they give additional activities for higher achievers or for lower achievers. Sometimes they add extra activities as additional support for some students. But it depends really on the teacher's guide.
Well, that's up to the supervisors. They have to be sure that the lesson plans match with.
They are.
They are.
Not only the lesson plans, they should have so before starting their school year, they have to check the analysis and all the material provided by the analysis and the objectives or the outcomes students should come out of at the end of each year, or at the end of the whole grade 1, 2, 3, and 4. They should have. We make sure that they have reviewed all that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Here's another example of grade 4. Another boys' school, and it was making a cake.
Yes, grade 4.
The kids actually made it. So you know, this is authentic. This would be.
Yes,
authentic.
they do make a cake in our schools. Yes, when we
they're fantastic. They're brilliant. Right. So all I was going to show you now, and I'll share my screen with you, is where are they here? Example. Yeah. So there, I've got that. So I'm just going to do it for here is the front cover of the teacher's book. Here is the front cover of the pupil's book. Scope and sequence, which this is where you get the learning outcomes. All right, so you'll find that in the pupil's book, and it tells you exactly what is the content of each of the units. This is all the teachers can assess. All right, so grade 1, that is all that they can assess. They cannot assess reading and writing because that has not been introduced. They can assess the writing of 3 numbers by unit 2. Okay, so this is the information where the teachers will find where to get the learning outcomes. So when they write their learning outcomes, it will be very clear. At the end of unit 1, the students can give greetings. They know how to greet and they know how to say their name. That's all you need, the listening and the speaking. And they have started to learn, they don't actually see the letter yet. They are hearing the letter sound. So they're making a link between what they hear and what they can say. Okay, so that's 1. And then we have the revisions. Here we have, this is here, this is the first revision. So after every 4 units, there is a revision. If the teachers want to use that as the assessment, that is fine, because this has got activities to basically check that the learners have understood the first 4 units.
So Wendy,
yeah.
Are you sharing something, because we cannot see anything on the share slide.
Okay, sorry about that. Let's have a look. Yes, I am sharing something. Now let me just get this here. Why can you not see what I have got? Let's have a look. There it is. New share. Okay, here it is. Share. Okay. Right, so here you should be able to see I have got the front cover of the teacher's book, front cover of the pupil's book. So this is what I will need as a teacher to write my learning outcomes. I need the teacher's book and the pupil's book. In the pupil's book, here are this is where I get my learning outcomes. Can you see this on your screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so this is where I get my learning outcomes. And this is all I can assess. There is the content. It's very controlled because we want to recycle as much as possible. If you give too much content in 1 unit, the children will just get flooded. And then, let me just get to down here. And then this is what the revision unit looks like. Again, you can see focusing on the listening, the speaking, and then they're going to actually do some writing because they're going to count, practice counting. If you are introducing numbers, you have to do something with those numbers, okay? And then revision, here's another page. Again, what we can assess is how good are the children's fine motor skills. Okay. This takes, because Arabic is so different, this will take quite a long time for the children to learn. And there is another page, again, focusing on listening and speaking, then listening and writing. So this is the number formation. Again, listening and understanding. So they are going to listen for a number, and then they have to do a circle, draw a circle. Okay, this is authentic assessment. All right. Right, can I have some feedback and any questions?
Yes, I have a comment.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the assessment cycle. Starting with the planning, and you have already started talking lots about.
Sorry, you're not coming through very clearly.
Okay, can you hear me?
Start again.
I want to go back to the assessment cycle.
What, in the PowerPoint?
Plan to check that. Right?
Yeah, I want to, you've been talking about planning, doing, and I think that at the UNRWA, we've been doing lots of professional development to improve the teachers' ability to plan, to write outcomes, and to teach. The real problem is that when they go to evaluation, they do the evaluation task, but the challenge is that how they can then reflect and build decisions upon the evaluation task, because they don't have time to do that. Because the number of students in the classroom is, the average is 40 students.
Yeah.
So they do the evaluation task, but they don't have much time to know what the students really know about what they have taught. This is the challenge that we have, and this is the question that we want answers about.
All right. Okay. Now, I had between 35 and 45 children in the classes that I taught in Hong Kong. So I understand what that's like. So what I did was there are many activities which are games. There are many activities which are pair work and group work. And I just chose a different section of the classroom every lesson to go round and monitor. So you need to have the classroom register. The teacher needs to know the children very, very well, because they need to know their names, and focus on one group at a time. And that is, this is a continual assessment, all right? And I just use a very simple format. So it was a tick that, yes, they seem to get that, or a tick with a slight cross through it is partial. They're getting there. It doesn't have to be very technical for a continual assessment, because it's informal and it's ongoing. And you will find that children, some activities they're very confident with, and some activities they're not very confident with. So it takes quite a lot of learner training for different types of activities. You will know as a supervisor if teachers are doing the pair work correctly, or if they're doing pair work at all, or group work. Because when you observe, you will, at the beginning of the term, it might be a bit messy, but by the end of the school term, or let's say 3 or 4 units, it should be very smooth, because there's so many activities of pair work and group work. Does that answer your question, Rita?
It's actually Sam's question, but we all agree that the challenge is the big number of
Time.
yes, time
And how to
large
collect
classes.
that data to build upon them after the evaluation.
Because next time we're going to deal with another objectives, or
And we have
And each period has different objectives.
yes,
We
so
have
we're going to move to
assess
something
each
else.
objective, so we can't move to the next period unless we evaluate each student for this particular objective.
But the revision might be,
I mean, the thing is that we have to be realistic. If you've got 45 kids in your class, you cannot evaluate all of them and teach at the same time. So you have to be realistic about that. I think you need to look at one activity type, let's say pair work, and then split the class into groups, and then the teacher focuses on that particular, so focus on the activity type rather than the language outcome, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So you are saying that we don't have to assist all the students
At the same time.
No. You can't.
But
I mean, you just can't do it, and nobody should expect you to. I mean, no, you can't be teaching at the same time as assessing.
so how often do you think we should assess the
Well, what I tried to do was I had a class layout, so the children always went to the same place, and I had their names where they sat, so I could match it to the register, and I would then monitor a group, a part of the classroom, for when I'd already set up, let's say, the pair work or the group work. I would go and just stand next to them and just listen to them.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
another way, nearly all teachers and students seem to have smartphones now that you can record. So if the teacher wants to be really, really, you know, on ball, they record a group of children, and then the teacher can listen to it afterwards and have more time to sort of take in what's actually happening.
That's on regulations.
Yes.
We can't, yes.
For your own use, you always do that. So I totally agree with you that no teacher can assess all the students at the same time, and we are not expecting this from them. And when we were thinking of training teachers on authentic assessment, everybody agrees that we evaluate or we assess a number of the students at a time using observation individually or in pairs or in groups. So by the end of the month, you will be evaluating, or you have checked the performance of all the students. Yes.
Yes, you will. You will. You see, at the end of a unit, when the children do their presentation, and that can be in groups, it's usually in groups, then the teacher can use that as an evaluation as well, because everybody in the group should have something to say or do.
Yes, exactly. Okay.
So you suggest that the evaluation for the whole students should be done at least once for 1 unit.
Well, I think the end of a unit is a good time to do it. But
at the end of 2 units, because if you don't have a chance. Sometimes, as a teacher, you cannot cover all the students. I'm talking about the individual performance, because when you are observing the group task, sometimes you cannot decide on the individual contributions of every single student. But when you sit near every student and observing him speaking, and so sometimes you cannot take data in each unit, for example, after 2 weeks or so. By the end of 2 units, you may have assessed all your students in all the skills.
Yes.
And I guess good.
Yes.
Talking about the
now, one of the things that I noticed is that teachers like to, for the presentation, they like to make one group at a time come to the front. You will never get through all the groups that way. So the way I do it is I get groups to present to each other, so that everybody gets a chance to present their materials and they have an audience. Then that means that the teacher's role is monitoring and walking between all the students. Again, this is to do with learner training. You have to teach them to behave themselves when they're doing this, and respect each other when the other group is doing their presentation.
Yeah. because this is part of the assessment.
Yeah.
How they listen to each other, some ground, or how they respect the ground rules agreed upon.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. And how well they cooperate during the group work.
Yes. So they should get marks. You should say to them, part of the assessment is your behavior. Is can you behave well when you are doing this group work?
So that the dominant students, although they are good students, this is not a good behavior out of them. Just an example.
Absolutely. They have to learn to behave because it's a real life skill. Those dominant students have got to learn to respect other students.
I just have one, I want to make this more particular. If the objective of the lesson is writing the letters A and C, and then I didn't assist all the students for writing the letters A and C, how can I move on to the next period, which will not deal with A and C, and then go to the other unit, which will deal with D and another letter? So I think that it doesn't make sense to move to the next step or the next period if I don't give the chance for each student to be evaluated if he or she has been given feedback for his writing the letters A and C. Each student should be given feedback, evaluated. I can't move on to the next period because there are other letters that will be taught.
Now, you realize that English for Palestine, we are introducing the letters and sounds in the order of frequency. We are not introducing them in the ABC order.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the letters A and C are the first letters to be taught. And
yes. Okay.
And then two new letters or 3 new letters will be taught in another period. So I can't move to the next period unless I evaluate each student for writing the letters A and C.
So that's why I say that formal and informal assessment should go together. So in addition to the formal assessment, now every single class, the teacher should observe his students and assist those who needs additional support. For example, you are teaching A and C, and you observe your students. If you are teaching well or you are adopting good methodology, you expect that more than 75% of your students are mastering the letters. So you should pay careful to those who are struggling. This is different, I guess. This is different from the data you are going to collect. So
right.
Formal assessment and informal assessment going together.
Right.
So sometimes you have to feedback on the spot. And
yes,
this is
now, exactly. Now, I'm just looking at that particular lesson. So this is grade 1. So the writing of A and C is introduced in unit 6. Okay. So lesson 1 is just introducing it and aligning the sound and the initial sound of words. And then period 2 is, can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay, so period 2 is then recognizing it and then starting to write it. Now, the amount of practice in the pupil's book is not enough. You need to have a copybook for extra practice. Or, I think in the back of, yes, it's in the back of the teacher's book. Where is it now? Is it in the back of here? There is a poster, but there is also an example there for the learners to, this is actually for the word cards the teacher needs to make. Yeah. Now, I don't know how you've how you're doing this, but you need to have a copybook that is for writing the letters of English. Have you actually managed to find those, or do you just because you need to have you need to have 4 lines.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned about writing the letters A and C. So that's only period 2. Period 3, they're not doing that. Period 4, they are again tracing and copying. Period 5, they're not. Period 6, they are. So the whole of 1 unit is focusing on only 2 letters, A and C, which so you should be able to go to the next period, the next lesson, and you should be able to quickly go around the classroom and see, can the children write these?
I just want to put my question in other words.
Okay.
And the first lesson is the alignment between sound and letter.
Yeah.
Can I move to the next objective, which is recognizing the letter, without making sure that all the students know the alignment?
Well, because you are doing games all the time, you know, I see something beginning with the sound A or K, and because you'll have the posters or the picture cards of the children, the children's names are linked to the initial sound of the letters you're introducing. So you are continually recycling. Yes, you can go to the next lesson. It's fine. Don't worry about that. They will catch it, because you'll be doing the first 2 letters in 1 unit, and then you go to the next unit and you'll be introducing 2 more, but you're recycling from the previous unit, so you're building.
Okay.
Thank you very much. You
okay.
My question.
So we have to evacuate the room in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Before that, we have all to thank you very much for this very, very rich discussion and this wonderful webinar. Thank you very much.
We're looking forward for another session.
Yeah. Yes, if you are ready to give, because this is
tell me what you need. You know, I have never had the opportunity of speaking to you and seeing you before, so this is wonderful for me. Thank you very much for inviting me.
How can we take this PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, well, I'm wondering. Are you sharing that? I'm wondering about that. How we can do it.
You can send me on a.
I'm sure.
You can send it on a shared drive or something, and I can share it with my colleagues and with others.
Okay. I think in the future, if it's possible, you should try to be the one that starts the Zoom, because then you've got it. I'll have to speak to Nick.
Because we don't have the original copy of the Zoom, so
that's why.
And we cannot share. That's the problem. So I tried to send you an invitation, and I consulted a technical. I said that you better do it your end.
Okay.
But I guess you'll find a way to share it with us.
I will speak to Nick about how we can do this, because I know he's coming out to Gaza soon, isn't he? So I can send him. I can copy it and send it.
Another question? A final question?
Yes, go on.
Just a final question from the deputy of the chief.
Wendy, actually, I didn't hear anything about the indicators that the teachers will rely upon while using the evaluation instruments. If they evaluate a group of students, then how they will categorize the students into groups of excellent, very good, good, or any other categories of students.
Talking about the rubrics or something like that?
Of course. And what is the needed indicators the teacher must rely upon in categorizing the students into this group.
Good question.
Personally, I would never do that. I would never put all the excellent ones together and all the weak ones together. You can really destroy the children's confidence.
No, he's not talking about categorizing the students into groups. Just we are not giving marks, but at least we are giving a qualitative assessment. Or how can we judge that this person or this kid is doing excellent or doing very
all right.
well?
Okay, so you have to write some criteria. You have to write, it's got to be criterion referenced. So, you know, you have to actually give a description that the child can pronounce the word very clearly, or the child can pronounce the word, but there's some error in the word, the sounds. You have to write a descriptor.
So we have worked on that, and we have come out of something like that.
Every teacher must put these criteria himself, and then if there will be, for example, 2 or 3.
I think you need to do this. I think you need to do this. You need to do this from your from the top. And then, because you want all the teachers to do the same thing. If you say to the teachers, you must do this, you're going to have a big mess.
Yeah. We just want to confirm that we are on that same track, and that's what we already have done. We have started to put or to do rubrics to judge based on the content analysis of Macmillan, by the way.
Yeah. Yes. Good. 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 Great.
So thank you again very much.
My pleasure.
Everyone here.
Okay. Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
See you.
شكرا لكم.